Welcome to a Degenerate Friday edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest, along with one Mike Lubie Lubitz. Very happy to be with you here on nofilter.net. And I think this should probably be etched somewhere permanently. I mean, if they could etch the Tim Tebow speech onto an educational building, I mean, they literally etched this thing in stone, that stupid Tim Tebow speech, remember? When
Yes,
he
the
was whining
crying
and crying like a
boldness.
baby. Be a man, Tim. Be a man. No one will ever try harder. No one will ever play harder. No one will ever work harder.
Get the fuck out of
And
here.
nobody will ever give you this byline of bullshit with more significant conviction than I will. Tim Tebow.
Mhm.
Imagine you're at the University of Florida, a very distinguished academic establishment, Louis. A
Yes.
lot of kids have trouble getting in there in the state of Florida now. It's probably the most difficult of the Florida universities. That includes like Florida State, talking about state schools here,
Mhm.
where everybody goes, University of Central Florida. Hey, even a guy with a D average can get in there. There
Yeah.
was always that one school that you could always get into. I don't
Oh
even know
yeah.
if that's in that category anymore.
Oh,
But to etch that speech, that idiotic speech, that if you took any public speaking class that was even at some JUCO in the middle of Montana, they would have said to you, "I really think you ought to pick up a copy of the classifieds." They etched that into a building there at the University of Florida. Hey, no one will ever play harder. Whining, crying like a baby. You can see that scene literally in The Godfather, where the Sinatra type is in there talking to Marlon Brando, and he's saying, "I can't get a movie part," and he says, "Be a man." You're thinking Barzini's going to put a bullet in his head, any second now for whining and crying like that. Instead, they herald this guy as if he was some kind of a genius. But if I was going to say something, Louis, that was going to be etched in stone as one of the
Mhm.
great statements of all time, right up there with our good friend Burt Randolph Sugar, the great boxing writer, the guy with the fedora and the cigar. We love Burt,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
we miss him dearly. And he probably had the greatest line ever about anything in the world and the whole spirit of being a human being and the spirit of humanity. And that is, I would rather be a good liver than have a good liver. Great statement, right? But here's what I'm going to leave you guys with, and you can decide. The historians can decide if we were onto something. In life and in degenerate life, it's always best to be the book.
Oh
You
yeah.
want to be the
That's
book.
what.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
You want to be the guy that's booking the action. I was talking to some kids in a restaurant the other day, and I said, "Hey, did you guys have any money on the Bears the other night on the money line? They were from Chicago." And the kid looks at me and says, "No, I am the book now."
He was so happy.
Nobody thought they could win. There weren't enough inducements in the world to get people to bet Chicago. As we've stated, I mean, they could have offered a blowjob from Mike Ditka, and you still wouldn't have bet the Bears in that game.
God rest his
Mike
soul.
Singletary could have stopped by your place if he was still with us, and spent the evening watching the game with you. You still wouldn't have bet the Chicago Bears in that particular ball game. And of course, they ended up winning. And last night, I mean, this was such an evil torture job by the gods of gambling. If you happen to have West Virginia, the Mountaineers, in their game against Houston, as Houston coughs up the lead. Water, water. You're getting 3 points with Houston, and not only do they cough up the lead, but they give up a touchdown that is going to defeat them against the point spread. Your money is going right into the fireplace if you had Houston and 3 points in that game. 12 seconds to go in a contest, and Houston gets the ball back. Now, what are the odds? We just saw an egregious, outrageous example of how things can turn in the just snap of a finger as we watched Mario Cristobal with the bonehead coaching decision of all time at the University of Miami failed to take a knee with 33 seconds to go in a game that he had won against Georgia Tech.
Exactly.
And what does it do? It cost them the game outright.
Yep.
And here's Houston. They get the ball, 12 seconds to go. I guess there was a penalty, brought the ball out to the 15-yard line that many people consider to be bogus. I didn't actually see the end of it, but I did watch the highlights later on. And I did have action on this game because one of my favorite aspects of enjoying the football season is for years now, I've been individually booking the bets of my friend. Don't be calling the FBI on me or anything. It's sort of
Mm.
harmless. Isn't it legal now? Everybody's a freaking bookmaker. No, Luby? Are you making book anywhere? I think you're taking
No.
action. Did you have the Braves last night? I think you did. The guy had to make that catch against the wall. What are you talking about there? That was impossible. Hey, rookie, drop it. If you're on Atlanta, they're all whining and crying now about speaking of Tim Tebow. Well, geez, we had the time off. That bye really killed us. Which I refuse to
Mad at
believe that
him.
that was any form of disadvantage. I mean, just hit the baseball, all right?
Exactly.
Team with 500 home runs during the course of the season. They're striking out 20 times a game. But what are you going to do? But Acuna nearly got him off the hook last night and shows you the thinnest margins of differential can decide the outcome of not only sporting events, but of the fate of your financial fortunes.
Honestly.
Which last night, I mean, how bad is that if you have West Virginia, Lubie, and you lose the game on a Hail Mary?
Oh my God.
Very similar circumstance also in the Kansas City Chiefs game against Denver. And this is one of the beauties about being a degenerate gambler. And it happened to be true in the sport of highlight here in South Florida, where it was advantageous at times to root against your own team. And that was a circumstance that popped up last night, didn't it? You had the line at 10.5 in the Kansas City Chiefs game. They're taking on the hapless, lowlife Denver Broncos with Sean Payton. You're wondering, why did I come back? He had it made in the shade, didn't he?
Yes.
As a commentator that really didn't offer too much in the way of personality or particular insight, Sean Payton was cruising with $1 million paychecks. What does he want to come back into coaching for? To prove what, Lubie? That the thing with the Saints wasn't a fluke? You got one championship, right? Probably known more for Bountygate than he is for that Super Bowl title that he won. Anyway, they're going against the Denver Broncos are horrible this year, according to everybody. People are not necessarily as down on Russell Wilson as you would think the record would indicate they should be. Many people that we talk to that cover the NFL during the course of the week, they say, oh, no, Russell Wilson isn't that bad. He's not the problem. But the problem is they blow. And so you're thinking 10 and a hook with Kansas City. Great. 16-0. Kansas City has squandered away in crystal type fashion. A couple of opportunities to score. They attempt a fake field goal, and that fails to gain the necessary yardage. Boom, ball's going back the other way. You're fucked. All right. You're thinking they need these points to cover double digits in the NFL. And then Mahomes, I mean, there's a guy wrapped around him. He looked like Ray Lucas when he was in the league there. And he would be prone on the ground and still trying to throw a pass. Remember
Yeah.
Ray?
Yeah.
It was with the Dolphins, when he was a big practitioner of that particular strategy. And guess what? It doesn't work. It usually leads to a pick.
Mhm.
You're going down, Lucas. And then, boom, he throw the ball and in midair, and like while prone to the ground, and boom, be picked off every single time. So Mahomes gets picked off. That was another scoring opportunity, badly squandered by the Kansas City Chiefs. They're hanging in there at the end of the game. You're laying 10.5 if you're a Chiefs fan. Maybe you're even wearing like an Andy Reid face mask or something as you're watching the game there. You're screaming and you're yelling. You got this thing. You're sick and tired of Taylor Swift, by the way, which isn't everybody. Is that enough?
Yes.
We know she's banging Travis Kelce. But do we even know that?
We don't know what
She was wrapped around Beyonce the last time we saw her.
We don't know what.
I don't know what's going on there. Do you? I mean, everybody's assuming they're doing it, right? Well, there she is. She's coming out of his apartment. Paparazzi flying all over the place. Even Al Michaels was getting into this thing. Al, who, hey, Al, you awake? What's going on with Al Michaels? He's a long way from do you believe in miracles, isn't he? I mean, nothing against the guy. He's been a solid professional his entire life. Does anybody really have a beef with Al Michaels as an announcer?
You're weird about him, but I don't have an issue with him.
It's just that he, and I hope this doesn't happen to me because he is like 80 years old, isn't he? And he's still doing this,
He's
which
like
is great.
80. Yes, he's 80.
Yeah. But this happens, and a friend of mine turned me on to this a long time ago. You're done when you develop puppet mouth. And I think that's what's happened with Al Michaels. He's kind of like when they have the shots of him, and he was sort of vain about this. I think you never used to see the announcers much during the game when you were doing a football game. You do the opening, and then, once the game action started, you wouldn't see these guys again until halftime. And then at the end of the game, I'd be like, hey, what'd you think there, Joe Buck? What'd you think of this ball game? And they would wrap it up, and that was it. So you saw them like 3 times during the course of the 3 hours. But then Michaels had this vanity clause put in his NBC contract, I guess, when he was calling NBC football on the Sunday nights. And they had to have a certain number of shots of Michaels and Collinsworth in the booth.
Yes.
Remember that, Libby? When Michaels had kind of mandated, well, you got to put the camera on me.
in his
But
contract.
now it's come back to haunt him because it's clear that he has developed puppet mouth. It's a weird sort of mouth, no?
Yes, he has that
But it's
weird.
kind of permanent there. And he's tried every which way to cover it up, man. I think he's even had Victor Conti in there shooting him up with something. But it's not enough to get this condition to go away. So anyway, he's naturally onto the fact that the point spread is 10 and a hook, and you get to the point in the game where Denver scores. It's 16-8 after all these squandered offensive opportunities. Andy Reid had to be like shoveling Malamars in his mouth after the ball game in a fit of anxiety as Taylor and Travis waltzed off into some restaurant and had to close down for the night. The Chiefs look like they're in a position to win the game, but now you have to actually root for, as Denver logically is going to go for the 2-point conversion and try to make it 16-8 and trigger another cliche that I'm becoming really just to the point of despising. And that is when it's always referenced as, well, if they get this, it'll be a 1-score game. No, it's not. They need a touchdown and then another one of these freaking 2-point conversions, which only work like one every time out of every other. And so you know what? It's not a 1-score game. They're going to need to score like 2 times if they're going to get this thing done. But you have to root for them to get it because it's going to force the Kansas City Chiefs to make an effort to cover the point spread. And that's all your interest is in. If you even have like $5 on the game.
Yeah, if you had 10 and a hook, it was a 10-point game. And the Chiefs, if they don't get the 2, the Chiefs don't need to score. They have a 2, your favorite, a 2-score lead. So they
run down the clock as much as they can. They don't need to throw the ball in the middle of the field there and risk an interception or some other catastrophic result. No, you need them now. You're rooting against the team. You're like, fuck you, Kelsey.
You're mad.
You're hoping Taylor Swift has some kind of anxiety attack in the booth there, and that Kelsey's mother finally disappears. Exactly. Right? Go sell some soup. Just get the fuck out of here. Now you're rooting for Denver. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, Russ, man, you can do it, kid. Let's go.
Come on, Denver.
They get the 2-point conversion, and now you're rooting for Denver to cough it up.
Yeah, exactly.
And, let them march down the field, which they sort of did. It got compromised a little bit, but this guy Butker kicking for Kansas City rifles one through the uprights, and Michaels literally rose out of his seat there as if he was 35 years old now, not 87, and said, you know what that does, people? See, I love a guy who can lead like that.
To it? Oh, good for him. He actually referred to it. That's a spread beater.
Spread fucking beater. And that was what it was all about last night for me. It was great.
That's great.
So I end up, with SMU also covering kind of a fat point spread. I think they were laying 12.5 in that ball game. And they won their game by like 3 touchdowns. So that was in the bank. And the other 2 games, which I never would have bet on my own intuition and motivation, I had action on because I'm booking my friend's bets. And he's lost 8 out of the 9 or 10 years we've been doing this. And sure enough, it led me to the conclusion, Lubie, and this is probably the most significant thing ever that you could realize in life. It's always better to be the book.
Oh, yeah.
Always better to be the book. That's where you want to be.
Yep.
All right. With that, I mean, we had a handicapper on one of our other shows earlier this morning. And I mean, you talk about having balls. How fearless do you have to be to take the Giants getting 14.5 from the Buffalo Bills in this game? He had a theory about coming back from London and a stat that related to it.
Yeah.
That teams that have come back from London and played as like favorites, I don't know if it was double digits as a qualifier, have some horrendous record, like 1-6 against the point spread in the subsequent game. Are you buying into that? I mean, there could be something to the jet lag theory, couldn't there?
100%. Everything he said made sense. The problem is you're then betting on the Giants.
You're betting on the Giants with a backup quarterback, which may put you in a position where you're better off than you were with Daniel Jones, who, while he was running for his life and has had some excellent runs as a quarterback from scrimmage, when he's taken off, everybody remembers that scramble, and then all of a sudden he ran out of gas at the 1-yard line. But nonetheless, he was running for like 99 yards in that thing. So he can run a little bit, but he can't run away from this pass rush because the Giants' offensive line you would have to probably say, and you could do this without a lot of qualification, it might be the worst offensive line. Could we go all the way through the history of the National Football
No,
League? Has there been one worse?
I mean, there's been bad offensive lines, but
That Houston line that was in front of Derek Carr was pretty bad, wasn't it?
I mean, they're setting records. They allowed 11 sacks in one game. The Dolphins find a way to have 8 sacks. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're setting records, allowing sacks, then yes, you probably would be the worst offensive.
Fran Tarkenton couldn't survive with this Giants offensive line. Are you kidding me? And there's Fran. He's 50 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He's still running, though. There we go. He spins a 360. Looks like Earl Monroe out there. Those were fun times. But not necessarily if you were the cornerback and you were trying to run. So Tyrod Taylor, who's a backup for the Giants, does he give him a shot in this thing? I mean, he has the ability to scramble, and he's one of those guys that can throw the occasional dart while running even the opposite direction of his throwing hand.
Yes.
Does he give him a better chance? Can they cover 14 and a hook? Would you have the guts, Lubie, the intestinal fortitude that it would take to go ahead and take your hard-earned cash that you're making on this show here on No Filter and wager it on the New York Giants, a pathetic team that's likely to be down 28-0 before they get out of the first quarter? What do you think?
I wouldn't, but our friend Mark Lawrence is
very qualified handicapper too.
I give him credit. I wouldn't have the balls. No way. I would stay out of that game.
Again, much easier to be the book. Much easier to be the book, and just whatever side somebody takes, they want the Bills. Boom, you're booking it. Now you're a Giants fan, all of a sudden. All right, we wish you the best of luck with all of your wagers throughout the weekend. We had a couple of other games that people like. I don't see how is it possible that the University of Miami rallies against North Carolina, a team that's undefeated, and covers a 3.5-point spread on the road after that debacle of last week. One of the most bozoic moves ever made by any coach, any decision maker in the history of both sports and the world in general. Mario Cristobal failing to run out the clock and take a knee there in the final seconds against Georgia Tech. Doesn't need to do anything, hands the ball off. They lose subsequent to that. Ugliest loss, maybe. I mean, it could qualify as one of the ugliest losses in football history, and that includes you, Doug Flutie.
Exactly.
You. There's Phelan. Oh, my God, he caught the ball. Darrell Fullington was the cornerback. The guy was like 6'10". He could have been playing for the Knicks. And he couldn't block that pass. Unbelievable. Goes right over his head there, and zippity-doo-dah, we're out the door. What do you mean they lost? You're in the parking lot trying to, get out of there because it was chaos, pandemonium whenever you were leaving the Orange Bowl after a game because there was no rhyme or reason. There was no director of parking. Let's put it that way. There was nobody going like this.
Yeah,
waving
exactly.
you. You just parked in any helter-skelter way. It looked like you were parking in Woodstock. It was great. I think that might have been more organized. All right, good luck. All your wagers. If you were beaten by the hook last night in the Kansas City game, we feel your pain. Although we were euphoric in celebrating the fact that Butker kicked that 57-yard field goal or whatever that was that helped us avoid choking and covering the point spread. And those that had West Virginia, is there a GoFundMe page for those people that's been established yet? Should be, right? Contribute generously to the people who had West Virginia. They did not deserve to suffer that ugly fate. After taking like 12 seconds to go, you have to feel that's money in the bank, no? That was like when you left the building on the Ray Allen shot against San Antonio with the Miami Heat. It was in the bag. What are you talking about? Chris Bosh hasn't had a rebound since midseason. All of a sudden, he grabs one. And what is Duncan doing on the bench there, Pop? Explain that one. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Glad you tuned in to the morning briefing. Be the book is the lesson for today. If there was anything that you could take away from this program, we're not trying to teach anybody anything new. It's just obvious, painfully so, that if you've been fueled by self-sabotage your whole life and sending it in on the wrong team, just be the book. All right, we'll see you next time. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. See you on the next edition of the morning briefing.